Good afternoon, NBC Radio. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today, I have on a super awesome guest. But before we get into that, if you really want to support what I do and my work, you can go over to the shop. We have merchandise for sale. We have stickers, and we have shirts and hoodies with the first 50 guests on the back. Today, I have on Mr. Greg Flury. Greg has been playing the cello for over 15 years. It is his passion, and it is one of the largest defining factors of who he is. Greg has participated in the Allegretto Youth Chamber Ensemble, county and district orchestras, and many other various ensembles before moving on to study cello performance at the Sunderman Conservatory of Music at Gettysburg College. Since graduating in May of 2016, Greg has participated regularly in college and community orchestras around the central PA area, including York College Orchestra, Elizabethtown College / Community Orchestra, Millersville University Orchestra, Hershey Symphony Orchestra, Gettysburg Metta Chamber Ensemble, and Allegro Symphony Orchestra. You can find Greg and his projects on his website, gregoryflury.com, or on Facebook and LinkedIn, and all those links are in the description below. Greg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
So, tell me, what was it as a kid that got you inspired to do cello?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I first started in music at the age of 4 on the piano. So I started taking lessons at Elizabethtown College, and I switched to the euphonium, which is like the baritone. It's a small tuba-looking instrument.
Concert tuba, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Technically.
And I played that through middle school, and then during that time, I wanted to explore the world of strings. So I thought to myself, I just want to try the cello out. So I reached out to one of the music directors at my middle school, and she got me started. I just started taking private lessons over the summer, and then I dropped the euphonium pretty quick and just went with cello. So
what was the process of learning cello as a kid? A big instrument for a small.
Yeah, so luckily they have different sizes of instruments. So I started with a half-size instrument, but I grew pretty quick. So I went from half-size straight to a full-size instrument. So that was pretty seamless. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So at what point did you figure that that's what you wanted to do forever? Or play forever, rather?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I went to go see Zool Bailey, who's one of my favorite cellists, and we were at the Whitaker Center, and it was just awe-inspiring. And I told myself, this is what I need to pursue, because it's just like I felt on fire inside. And I had a similar experience my sophomore year in college when I got the opportunity to play at Carnegie Hall with the Hershey Symphony Orchestra.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was in the big Isaac Stern Auditorium. So I was sitting there on stage before we were playing, and I was just like transported to another place. I was like, this is what I need to do with my life. And, I've continued to try to do so ever since.
So how did you figure out how to do it successfully for life? Because people can play an instrument, but in order to live.
Yeah, so this is where the practicality of the situation comes into play, because unfortunately, making a name for yourself, making a career out of music and the arts is quite difficult, especially if you don't have connections or are independently wealthy, especially in the classical vein, because you are going up against some extreme competition. Nationally, regionally, globally, and you really have to kind of distinguish yourself and put yourself out there. Most careers, you go to college, maybe get some, graduate degrees, master's degree, doctorate, whatever it might require, and then you go on and, you put your applications in, or, you try to apply for a job, and then you just work there, right? With music, it doesn't work like that. So to speak, unless you're in an administrative role. So you almost have to think like you're your own business owner,
Mm.
because you are your own brand, you are your own business, and how you make money is up to you largely. So uh, one of the ways that you can do it is, if you have the connections, is you can be a soloist performer where you get the fees that will uh, pay for your way to go to the next concert, and you can kind of make a big name for yourself that way and work the major circuits. Another way is through teaching.
Mm.
Okay, and that's the course that I took. So then you have to consider, where do I go to teach? How do I get my name out there to build a studio, right? Because you want to build a studio that's big enough and stable enough that you can consider how much income you can have and kind of build your life around that. So I reached out to a bunch of local schools in the area, like private music schools in the area, and gave them my name and told them I want to start teaching with them. And through that, I've been able to gather enough students to start building a studio for myself.
That's awesome. Did you have to pick a teaching philosophy or come up with a teaching philosophy at all?
Yeah, so that is a very much kind of hands-on learning process,
Mm.
and at least in my experience, because when you're teaching for the first time, find yourself in in a situation where you know how to explain to somebody else how to do the thing that you've been doing
Without thinking about it for
without
so
thinking
long.
about it. And also, you have to take into consideration every student is different. So you
Mhm.
have to know how to interpret different concepts. So I would probably say teaching is one of the best learning experiences that you'll ever have, because you really have to know what you're talking about.
You really have to know what you're talking about.
And indeed, and when it comes to playing a string instrument, there's a lot that can kind of set you up for
Failure.
failure and injury.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that you avoid that. So you'll always have to be on top of monitoring, and it's not like you can go in and teach a class and hope the kid does their homework, right? Because
Of course, right.
you have to set up expectations that this is going to require hard work, it's going to require discipline, but the results are going to be extremely rewarding, and you have to dedicate to it. So
Especially as something where you have to have correct posture, correct, and not only posture of sitting, but posture with hand movement as well, because it can very quickly get very painful, and you can injure yourself very quickly.
yes, very much so. And you also have to learn critical thinking skills. You have to listen to your own playing. You have to understand what you're doing to make that sound. And, at the basis of it all, you want to make sure that you like your own sound. That's the basis of being able to play an instrument, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Aside from, the money and the abilities to play the different things, you just have to like your own sound. You have to like the music that you're playing. Um, so that's ultimately where you want to get the students. So you always have to make sure they ask themselves, do I like my sound?
Mm.
Does it feel good to play this way? And often with my students, I will say, after they've played something, my first response will be, so what did you think? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, that's
To get
good.
them thinking, because I've been in lesson situations where they just kind of talk and then I play and then I just kind of sit there. I'm not really engaged other than being able to play. They don't really want to hear. They never really wanted to hear my thoughts
This is more
on.
of their opinion on what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's not
I'm
a good way to teach, I don't think.
no, not in my opinion. So I try to make sure that they're engaged and talking themselves through their own process. Like we'll discuss concepts and stuff like that. So if I need to introduce something, then I might talk for a while. But I always try to get them engaged and talking.
Yeah, well, that's extremely important, especially when you do it on your own. When you practice on your own, that way you can, with that practice in the studio of asking, so what did you think about that? Automatically, when they're on their own, they're going to be thinking, well, how do I feel about that? And then talk, whether it be inner monologue or to themselves, talk their way through. Okay, I did this and I did that wrong. I need maybe bit more vibrato here, or pay attention to this dynamic marking here, or whatever.
Yeah. I tell them to, just ask themselves out loud, what about this did I like? And one of the things that I always ask at the very beginning of the lesson is, how was practicing this week? What kind of triumphs did you have?
Mm.
And what kind of things do you feel need improvement? So I try to, acknowledge that good things have happened, because I know it's too often for musicians to beat up on themselves, and that's not healthy. So I always try to put a positive spin, like, what did you feel good about this week? Are there some things that didn't go as well as they could have, so you can, that might need improvement, rather than what didn't go well? What did you fail at this time?
Right, of course, right. What needs work? All right, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what do you think is some of the hardest concepts to teach on a cello?
That's a good question. So the I divide up the concepts between the different hands, because they're doing very different things. Interestingly enough, a lot of the things that we do on the cello with the large motions, we do in everyday life. When we're talking to somebody at a coffee shop, or just like us right now, am I moving my hands? The kind of motions that I'm doing right now, you'll find also on people who are playing the cello. Not necessarily like different fingerings, because that would just be weird. But I would say the right hand is probably one of the more challenging, because you have to, because that's the one that kind of controls the sound, right? Because without the bow and without the plucking, your left hand might be able to do some things, but with the right hand, you have to balance between weight and control, and you're also holding a stick with air on it, which you might not ordinarily do. Exactly. So it's, getting somebody used to relaxing and trusting their own body. That's one of the hardest things, because it doesn't come overnight, and as much as you think about it, your body might not follow suit.
Yeah, and it's the matter of staying loose and not gripping it, having a death grip on it, and keeping it loose, but also controlled.
Exactly.
And that was one of my hardest things in any instrument, whether it be keys, drums. I've picked up the cello recently.
Oh, nice.
I'm sorry. Yeah, as a composer, I want to learn all the instruments
to
a basic degree, not trying to be the best at all. But I have a cello, and I'm trying to figure out how to play it. And that's the hard part, is for me, is holding the stick or the bow, if we're going to be academic here, and being able to control it, not being able to do like full arm motions, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more of just like a hinge that it's supposed to kind of act like, or is that violin? I can't remember.
I describe it as a ratio of motion, because you want to engage the entire arm. The motion actually starts for me in the back. So the bigger the muscle group, the more they can contribute, the less you have to really worry about, using pressure, because there's a big difference between pressure and weight.
Gotcha.
You feel the difference if you just try to hold your arm up and just feel how heavy your arm is, just as dead weight.
Okay.
It's much heavier than you might expect, because we're always used to just moving it around, holding it up ourselves, right? So using that weight to, hold the bow down rather than, gripping and trying to push back and forth, that's something that we kind of have to reverse engineer.
Okay.
And the ratio part comes with movement in the arm. So you have the upper arm, and then you have the lower arm. And for me, the way I describe it is you kind of divide the bow length into different segments. So if I'm going to bow across, I might use more upper arm and less lower arm. And then for maybe the second half of the bow, I'll use more lower arm than I would upper arm.
Gotcha.
So it kind of smooths out that way.
And it's also trying to keep a straight line as well. Not trying to.
Yeah, that's why you need the relaxed wrist, which is why it's important to use those bigger muscle groups that are up here and in your back.
Gotcha. So I've been doing it all wrong. That's what you get when you get self-taught.
Professionals are only ones that have been doing it wrong enough, long enough, that they can finally do it right.
So, how do you? Obviously, there isn't one way to play a cello.
Oh, of course not.
So, what has been your favorite way besides classical? Have you tried more modern styles? Have you tried like jazz or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So in college, I actually took a jazz arranging and ear training seminar. That was my like senior seminar class, and it was me, and then the other 98% of the class was the jazz band. So I was very out of place. But I got to be the walking bass for
Yeah,
most of
yeah,
our
yeah.
arrangements. So that was very fun. I also play string quartet arrangements of a lot of modern songs. So I play for a lot of weddings.
Mm.
Because I play with a group called Vivace Live. Yeah, Vivace Live. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I play with them sometimes, and we do a lot of arrangements of contemporary songs that are arranged for string quartet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been an interesting experience as well. Just from a compositional standpoint, it's focusing more, for me, from my observations, it just focuses more on different textures and such, because it's really accompanying words that would have been there if there would have been a singer.
Right.
But it kind of takes the same structure and kind of repeats it more and more.
Have you ever seen Mike Block?
No, I haven't.
No, yeah. Do you know? But do you know who I'm talking about?
Nope.
No. Oh no! You gotta look up him. He's the guy who created the cello strap.
Oh, so you can like stand up
So
and
you like stand up and
oh
play.
no
Yeah,
way!
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that was a thing.
Yeah, oh, yeah. If you want to check out some really wacky, really cool things, check out Mike Block. He came to our school a few years back. And the stuff he was doing was incredible because he was playing with an Indian musician, Sandeep Das, who was playing tablas.
Uh-huh.
So he was doing slides and on a guitar, you know, you can like do two hands to play the string.
Oh yeah. Yep.
He was doing that on a cello, and that blew my mind.
That's incredible.
Right, right. And doing like not inharmonic. Can you do inharmonics on a cello?
You can do art. So you can have there's naturally occurring harmonics, and then there's artificial harmonics.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. He was doing that stuff, and I was like,
yeah. So just the way that the term is escaping me at the moment. I'm gonna remember as soon as we're done. That's always how it goes.
It's always how it goes.
But as you go up the string, the way that it's divided will actually produce certain pitches on their own without actually having to press down on the string. That's a naturally occurring harmonic. So if you place your finger in the middle of the string on the cello, that's dividing the string in half. You'll play an octave above the string, and then a fifth, and then another octave, and then a third, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's the same way the guitar works with those.
Yeah. And then artificial harmonics are an interesting invention where you place your thumb on the string and you place your second or third or fourth finger, however, whatever's comfortable for you, and you can actually, as long as it's like a perfect fourth above, that'll produce an artificial harmonic. So you can actually play like a scale or like different melodies with harmonics that way.
That sounds like a music nerd's dream.
Well, anybody who's played Shostakovich, the second movement, the very end of that movement has almost the last page is like entirely harmonics, where you have to do that kind of effect. So,
it's incredible what you can do with certain instruments.
It is.
I didn't know and this is a little sidetrack, but flute, they can play 5 notes at the same time.
I did not know that.
Right?
That's incredible.
That's incredible because
Yeah.
the way they did it was you hum the first note and that creates something, and then there's harmonics on a flute that you can create by like overblowing and like stuff like you can create a chord with a flute, and it just blew my mind. That one of the students here, a good friend of mine, Jordan Knoll, she did it. And it was a train piece, so it kind of makes sense, right? It's very dissonant. But so was a train. But so she would have 2 melody lines going on. She would hum her melody line and play the flute melody line at the same exact time, right?
The amount of concentration that must take. That's incredible.
I know. It's so wild. Um, all that to say, people can do incredible things with instruments. Have you ever tried out the double bass?
I have not. I have not tried out the double bass.
Is this something you might be interested in, or is this something you're just gonna leave it to other people?
I might just leave it to other people.
Fair enough.
I do. I self-taught myself violin and viola. That's just more for like a practical kind of circling back to the teaching to
Right.
help build my studio a little bit quicker. Opening up to those other instruments.
More mainstream instruments.
Yeah, because there's lots of people that want to play the violin and the viola, and
Really, even the viola.
well, not so much the
I
viola.
was gonna say, the viola is the butt of many jokes, isn't it?
Oh yes, it is the New Jersey of the states.
Yes.
Yes. So mostly just violin, and then some cello, hardly any viola.
Hmm.
But yes.
So, how does one begin to build their own studio? What are some of the things that people might need? Some of the things that people are gonna have to think about
From
From
a
s-
teaching standpoint or like a student standpoint?
from a student standpoint, from getting people into your studio. You can make a studio, but how do you get people in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I said, I reached out to I reached out to those different schools, so they kind of already have the marketing set up. So it's again thinking as a business owner, how do you get your name out there? How do people notice you? Why do they need your services as opposed to somebody else's? Right? So that's where you really have to distinguish yourself, as someone who has a teaching philosophy, has experience, knows what they're doing, and is, very good at what they do. A lot of teaching comes with parents, signing their kids up because a lot of parents, they want their kids to be able to play an instrument or at least be exposed to an instrument earlier on. So that's going to be some of the experiences you'll have. And then some of the other experiences you'll have are, people that are genuinely interested on their own to learn how to play the instrument. So you need to learn how to kind of balance between the different motivation levels, the different learning styles, the different musical goals, and your own personal style. So it's a lot of juggling in that regard.
Probably a lot of adapting.
Oh yeah, you have to be very flexible with the material that you've been given.
Have you ever taught adult students at all?
Oh yeah, the range I've had is from 5 to 65. So
Wow.
yeah.
What's the biggest difference, do you think, between teaching a person who's in their mid, at least an adult, and then a child, fresh child?
There's a couple things that kind of set them apart. The time that they can contribute
Of
towards it.
course.
One of the biggest things is probably motivation.
Mm.
Because if you have like older folks and adults that are taking lessons themselves, that's because they're genuinely interested. They're curious to see what happens. They're curious to learn. So you're going to get a little bit
They're literally
more.
paying for it.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So when it's their own money on the line, then they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be asking more questions. They're going to have more life experience. So they're going to kind of know a little bit more about what they can do themselves. They know their own limitations to a point. And until they start practicing and realize that there were no limitations and they can actually go much farther than they might have expected. Whereas if you have like a 6 or 7 year old whose parents are signing them up for lessons, and because they just want to kind of get them going in a discipline to kind of give them a little bit more structure, or just I don't know, trying to get rid of them for 30 minutes at a time. Every situation is different.
For sure.
But holding their focus, trying to explain concepts to them, that might be more of the challenge rather than trying to introduce new repertoire or something like that.
Have you ever had a student come in with being taught previously bad techniques and had to rewire them?
All the time.
How does
All the time.
one begin to deprogram bad technique?
Constant reminders and repetition, because it's so I have cats at home, and if they do a bad thing, they get the squirt bottle.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So eventually they learn not to do that thing anymore, right? So not that I have a squirt bottle for the students whenever they do a bad thing. That would be terrible. But whenever I see them reverting back to an old habit, I'll have them stop and notice what they're doing. Because once you're made aware of a bad habit, or any habit really, then you're like, oh, I'm doing that again. Then you're kind of aware of it, and it kind of like refreshes your mind a little bit, and
it brings focus to it.
Yeah, it brings focus to it, and so if I have somebody that's has like a bad position, doing this, I'll just say wrist, fix the wrist, because I know we've talked about it before, and
naturally goes back.
They just might naturally go back to it, maybe because they're not practicing enough.
Or maybe they're practicing badly still.
Yes, or they're just not, thinking, and that's okay as long as you are developing a practice regime that works for you. And, just those reminders that, you need to fix this over and over and over again. And eventually they'll naturally just fix it on their own. And then it naturally just becomes second nature to play correctly.
And a lot of that is recording yourself and looking back at your recordings too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. One of the things I will tell them is to get a mirror and watch themselves play. So in the visual arts, like if you're painting or drawing or something like that, one of the best ways to see if your perspective and your what's the word? Different ratios are correct, is to look at it backwards through a mirror.
Really?
Yeah, my dad's a painter, so these are the random fun facts that I've learned over the years.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so if you're watching yourself play, then you'll notice a lot of things that you wouldn't have otherwise noticed.
Huh.
That's one of the that's how I taught myself to play with a straight bow and use the flat hair and all that kind of stuff, because if I'm watching myself and I'm playing like this, because it's very different being behind the instrument.
Oh, of course. Right.
Yeah. So watching yourself, recording yourself, because then going back to, do you like your own sound? Well, what does it sound like on the other end, on the other side of the instrument?
Yeah, it's completely different. It's mind-boggling. Even our voices. My voice sounds different in my head than what it does to you.
Yep.
The cello is going to sound different from you sitting behind the sound bell. What's it called? Chamber, the sound chamber. What is it called? Where the resonance comes from, because it comes out.
Oh, the body.
The body, yeah, the body. I guess that's what it'd be called. Yeah, because the sound is going that way, and you're getting whatever's rebounding or whatever's coming from the core instrument itself.
Exactly.
It's probably gonna be darker from what you're hearing.
Yep, and I mean it also depends on the space that you're in.
It also depends on the space. Yeah. If you're in a good acoustic room, if you're in a bad acoustic room. And that's another thing to be said. Play around in different areas so that way you know what to do in different areas.
Yeah, exactly. And experimentation with your own sound is one of the best things you can do. You don't have to play in a specific style or anything like that. Or when you do certain things, you just kind of experiment with how you might approach playing different dynamics or something like you can do different things with the bow. It's all the artistic interpretation, but
have fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about enjoying the experience. Like if you're going to jump into a lake, the purpose of jumping into that lake is not to immediately get out of the water.
No, not quite.
It is to luxuriate in the experience of being in the water.
Luxuriate.
Yeah. That's a $10 word.
Yeah.
I'm broke now.
So, besides teaching, what else do you do to gain revenue?
Well, currently, I mean, I still have to work a day job since the
pandemic.
Yeah. So, the pandemic kind of threw a wrench into things because
I'm sure.
I wanted to start developing an in-person studio, and it was going pretty quickly. And I was thinking, wow, this is great. So said I in January of 2020.
This is great.
Yes. So then everything went online, and with that came online teaching. So I've discovered that a lot of parents thought that their kids could not concentrate over Zoom for the 30 minutes that we
I
had.
think it's just bad. I just think it's bad.
I've heard mixed reviews. So I still teach some online, just because of a logistics thing. Because I still work full time, like 8 to 4:30, and then I would go teach. So from that perspective, so there are some good things about it, and there are some questionable things that are better in person.
Right, that was one of the hardest things for a music composition person, or because you didn't have the teacher to grab your hand and meld it into the shape that it needed to be, or put your instrument in the position it needed to be, or use your hands to like for conducting. How to do different hands, how to do different motions. That's the correct term for conducting without being there watching in person, as opposed to a flat screen where it's hard to tell what's going on. But some people are good at it, and I give them credit to that.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're connected in a disconnected way like that, that forces your hand to also be able to describe how to do things. So
yeah,
that's kind of one of the pros of teaching online. You then, well, from the teaching standpoint, you kind of learn how to describe to a student to hold the instrument correctly so that you can articulate your thoughts a little bit better, which then in turn makes you think about your own way of holding the instrument, so on and so forth. Yeah, and so then when you get in person, then you can talk to them about it, because the one of the ways that, in my mind, a concept sticks best is if they kind of figure it out for themselves. So if you kind of lead them to a solution, you can talk them through, and it's not like you're like hiding the answer away, and then you're going to give it to them once they figure it out on their own. It's not like that at all. But if the correct technique is a logical conclusion that they come to on their own, with that guidance, that's what's going to stick the most, just because it makes common sense.
They made their connection. They made
the connection. It's all about connecting the dots for them.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ways of teaching. I teach music theory. I taught music theory for a while, and one of my favorite things was to teach the logic behind it, because you can say what a secondary dominant is, but what is its purpose? How did it get there? That's a whole different other question. I know that this is a 5 of 5 and it goes to the 5 of this and blah blah blah. But what's the purpose behind it? What's the movement behind it? How does the theory work? And if I just lead them through that logic, because it's surprisingly, musical theory is rather logical.
And it definitely is. I also was a teacher's assistant. I also helped teach music theory, and a lot of the teaching was how to get around what I like to refer to as academic legalese. It's a bunch of words that they made up to make it, to kind of try to put things in order, but then in that order, it kind of confuses people a little bit from the practical reality of the situation.
Oh, for sure. Well, because music theory gets so intense that it is literally, some of the stuff that they say, it's literally, especially when you get into like jazz, gets made up.
Oh my gosh. There was a meme I saw recently where they compared, how you can, when you're like making an account for something and it has like suggest strong password, and the password now looks like
it's the
a jazz chord.
Yeah. At a certain point, jazz is purely make believe and purely theory.
Oh yeah.
No logic. It just sounds nice. And
yes,
that's all that matters, really. But I love going through the logical steps, because when they make that connection, when they make that brain connection on their own, it's going to stick way, way longer, because they made that brain connection by themselves, as opposed to you just telling them this is that.
Yep.
And that's why.
The neurons have met, and your job is done.
Yeah, and because those are some of the best. That's the best way I learned in school here was I can remember a lot of the Old Testament class because he laid it out logically. Well, if this is the covenant and this is a little bit religious, but this is the way I learned. If this is the covenant and they did something wrong, what's going to happen? Oh, that makes sense why Israel is now 40 years in the wilderness. Stuff like that.
Exactly.
But simple logical walkthroughs like that help so immensely. I think that's one of the best ways to teach, period. I think.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And additionally, when you're in an academic setting like that, not only do you have to deal with, trying to make that connection, but there are also different fields of study that you're having to deal with. Like like when you're trying to instruct them or explain a concept that the professor, who's been in music theory for 20 years, thinks that everybody can understand it. Like, why can't you count to 8? And I was like, well, let me count the ways. But when you're in a just like a teaching session where kids come to you for help, you might have economics majors, you might have sociology majors, physics students. They all think differently. They're all in a different mindset. It's incredible, and you always have to try to make that connection. That's sometimes we might fail in making that connection, but that's
the fun part.
Yeah.
How do you explain to a person who thinks in numbers how this particular concept works? How do you explain someone who thinks in abstract ways as like an artist? How do you explain that abstractly to them in a way that makes sense to them? How do you explain anything logically abstractly, right?
Yep. One of the arts of teaching is the art of connecting the abstract to the concrete.
Yes. And that's a hard thing sometimes to do.
It's extremely difficult.
So, as a performer, what have been some of your top performances in your mind?
Well, one of my more exciting ones was I got to actually play a concerto with the Elizabethtown College Community Orchestra as the soloist.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's
cool.
Yeah, that was very exciting.
Probably nerve-wracking.
Yeah, a little bit. But the way that it worked, it wasn't part of their typical, because they have like a concerto competition, so it wasn't part of their typical program. But I'm as a community member, I can't participate in that really.
Of course.
But I just happened to mention to the conductor, I'm working on this concerto, the Weinberg cello concerto, and he listened to it and he gave me a call and was like, "We need to play this for the program that we were working on." And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." So I got that opportunity in November of 2018. Yeah, I think that was it.
Has there ever been a performance where something has gone utterly wrong?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about it.
So I'm in 10th grade in high school, and I decide I want to play the Bach Cello Suite, Prelude Number 1. Da 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 da.
That's the one that we're talking pre-show.
Yes.
The one that, if you know any cello suite, it's that one.
It's that one. And this performance will forever live in my mind because so much went wrong. So 10th grade, I go on stage for the talent show at the high school.
Oh, not a talent show.
Oh, yes, the talent show.
Oh, no.
Because high schoolers are not ones to judge at all, are they?
Not at all, no.
So I go on stage, and I start playing, and from memory...
First mistake?
Yeah, that's my first mistake. And suddenly, I don't remember what I'm supposed to play. And I forget, 3 lines of music. And I start fumbling around and just completely mess up, the second half of the first page of the piece. Fortunately, nobody really knows classical music anymore.
Of course, yeah, right.
So they didn't really pick up on the fact that I had majorly ruined this piece. So they all thought it was great anyway, but
internally,
I still know.
I know. It's like, you can't give me thanks.
Yeah, you can't applaud me for this.
Can't applaud. No, they start applauding. Stop.
Yes.
Boo me, please.
Please hold. I will accept silence.
Well, But that's some of the hardest things to do as a musician is when people tell you good job, you have to accept it.
Yeah, accepting a compliment is going to be a skill that you need to learn.
Yes, you can't say I did horrible because they didn't know that.
Yeah, you have to consider where they're coming from. They don't know the instrument as well as you do.
Right.
Unless you ask them and find out that they're a professional and then they thought you did a good job anyway. And they're just like, oh, you were in the audience? Well, I'm glad I didn't know that until afterwards.
Right, of course. Yes.
But if they come up to you and say, that was amazing, great job, you just got to
say thank you. That's it.
Yeah, you thank them and appreciate that they appreciated you.
Yeah. Don't start making excuses because it's not the point.
Yeah, that'll cheapen it for them, and
it'll cheapen it for them, and then you're gonna think about it later and like, why did I say that?
Yes, negative self-talk is one of the hurdles that I, among many musicians,
everyone deals with that. Yeah,
must tackle.
Have you ever had all your strings burst and all your horse strings?
No, so not on my bow, but on my cello, yes. So this was for an audition. Right before it, I was practicing the piece, and one of my strings snapped and flew off the instrument.
That can kill you, can it? Or, it severely hurt.
Yeah, it can really hurt your face. I might be speaking from personal experience.
What do you do in that? You can't throw it.
All you can do is really flinch and hope that it doesn't hit your face, because you don't know where the string is really going to go.
Of course, right.
But the next question is, where am I going to get another string? So it's
and restring it in time.
Yeah. And since I was in high school and had no money, where am I going to get a duplicate? Luckily, somebody had a spare I could use.
That's nice.
Yes, but having a spare set of strings and a spare bow is very essential.
It is really funny to me whenever I watch these musical fails all the time. And whenever it's a little kid and they go up and they start playing and they boop, and all the hairs come off.
Which just happened.
Which happens so many times.
I wasn't supposed to play that.
What do you do in that? Because is that a case of I assume it's a case of it being too tight.
It depends. I mean, sometimes it's because, if it's the bow, maybe the bow is warped because it's not tightened or loosened enough. Maybe they're just badly made. It's case by case. Sometimes the strings are tightly wound and too tightly wound, and then you just, then you have to make sure they're loosened. But if that ever happens, especially in a public setting, all you can really do is just kind of acknowledge it and maybe laugh with the audience, because
definitely make a joke out of it.
Yeah, they're on the same side as you. Everybody was not expecting it, so
right.
It's like, oh no, this thing happened. Now I know that they have a procedure for this kind of thing in performances.
Really?
Yes, in with professional orchestras. So if you're the soloist and one of your strings breaks,
isn't the first chair gives you the
first chair gives you theirs, and so on and so forth until the last chairperson that doesn't have an instrument, I guess.
That'd be a funny comedy bit and a half.
Just I'm just sitting here, I don't know what to do. I was gonna play Brahms, but now I'm not.
Now I'm gonna watch someone else play my instrument.
Yes.
And hope they don't break my instrument.
Exactly. And I'm sure I guess they have some kind of replacement, something or other, but they have the money to get a second.
Of course,
instrument.
right? If you're playing a Philharmonic, you definitely have at least.
Yeah, because it's all about the seamless experience for them. So it's not like it's gonna be too much of an issue.
No, not at all. So, what else have been some of your favorite performances that you've done? Places you've been to, concerts even.
Oh gosh, that's a great question. So, I'd have to say one of my favorite performances was with the New World Symphony in Baltimore. No, not Baltimore, DC. It was at the Kennedy Center.
That is DC.
Wherever that is. Is that DC?
I think it's either DC or Baltimore. They're so close. It might as well be both.
Yeah. So two different experiences, and this kind of harkens back to remember when I was talking about that kind of inspiring moment where you're just like
you just feel it.
You're in the moment. Nothing else matters. The universe is not moving at that specific moment in time, and you're just, you and the music are looking straight at each other, and you finally acknowledge one another. The first experience was when I was in college, and they were playing a concert, and that's when I got to hear Ein Heldenleben, which is one of my favorite of Richard Strauss's tone poems. And that was incredible. And I was just looking at the cello section, and I was thinking to myself, this is what I need to do with my life. And then the second was a little bit later. I was out of college for a couple of years, and I went and they played The Pines of Rome. And I was sitting in the back because I bought the cheap tickets.
Of course.
And at the end of The Pines of Rome, which in my opinion is one of the most epic build-ups in music that I can think of off the top of my head.
Really?
Some of the trumpets are instructed to play off stage. So some of the trumpet players came and were standing like a stone's throw away from where I was sitting with the friends that I had with me.
That's cool.
Yes, and in both scenarios, it was incredible to see how this body of professional musicians could be so connected. It was, a firsthand experience seeing what like perfect intonation feels like or sounds like, and to really experience
Unified
a
sound.
story
Right.
rather than a bunch of notes.
Fair.
Right? Because, when we're going through high school, through college, we're interacting with people that are learning how to express themselves. They're on that journey. And when you experience a bunch of people that have not necessarily completed the journey, but they are at a very advanced level of ensemble playing, it is an otherworldly experience. It's like giving you that kind of next level peak.
If there are two performances that I'll answer this myself, but this question is coming to you too. Three pieces that you have to see a professional philharmonic or whatever ensemble do, but I'll answer mine. Three pieces that I need to see before I die. It's Rhapsody in Blue. I keep forgetting it. Schubert's Unfinished Eighth.
The Unfinished Symphony.
The Unfinished Symphony. I have to hear that one because I would argue that that's probably the biggest build up. From when, at least in the first movement, with all the jumps and the that was the first classical piece that made me get chills. Honestly,
I've actually gotten to play that. Yeah, it's great.
It's so much fun and it's so good. I'm so happy I got introduced that. I had to conduct that piece. That was so much fun.
You got to conduct it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that was so much fun. And the third piece, I didn't have the third piece. What's the Threnody? The Threnody, is it the piece it was the piece that was written after Hiroshima and Nagasaki got bombed.
Threnody for the Hiroshima victims
Hiroshima
by
victims.
Krzysztof Penderecki.
Yeah. One of the most soul-chilling, goosebumpy pieces I've ever heard. Granted, I'm no classical musician connoisseur.
Well, I mean that also brings into question what is classical music anymore, right? Because if you think about it, what was the music of yesteryear considered when you're in the 18th century? New music, that contemporary artist Beethoven,
Right.
or that that rascal Mozart coming up with new things that are raking and shaking the establishment. They're changing how things are done, and now we consider them the old stuffy establishment, the old dead white guys, that everybody wants to hear. And every time somebody says classical music, they think, Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Vivaldi, all those names of the people that lived like 300 years ago.
Vivaldi isn't technically classical. He's technically Baroque, isn't he?
He's Baroque.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Like me.
Classical music? Who is it nowadays? But when somebody says classical music, they're really thinking of a very small subset of music history.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because there's ancient music, there's like medieval music, Baroque. The list is endless.
Then romantic, then neo-romantic, then what is it? It gets so convoluted so quickly.
Yeah.
And it's all beautiful music.
Yeah, I mean, most people when they say classical music, you think an orchestra.
Oh.
And like an orchestra, and they're playing, old like Bach music, and when it really could be something completely different by your definition. I mean, there's the dictionary definition of Western classical music.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very small, very closed off perception of what classical music is.
Yeah.
I mean, and even in that dictionary definition sense, some pop music, some new, I don't know what the kids are calling it nowadays. But
pop music.
Pop music. If you look at it through that dictionary definition, some of that might qualify as neo-Baroque music.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, it might be a stretch, but by the letter, it might be considered as such.
If you put all those instruments back in the classical instruments, you would be right.
Yeah, now that's just looking at it through a purely theoretical and academic standpoint, which nobody really cares about when it comes. No. Yeah, nobody cares about that.
Nobody cares about that.
So it's something that's up for debate. I don't have the right answer about what classical music is. I have an idea of what
it is for me.
What it is for me, and there are some like lots of things that I will listen to because I like what it has to say. It's not necessarily in the vein of what people think of as classical music. Like one day it might be that I want to listen to a Rachmaninoff piano concerto. The next day I might want to listen to Alice in Chains and AC/DC.
Yeah.
So that's I don't think it's healthy to necessarily kind of box it in.
No, it's not. You shouldn't box stuff in because it's truthfully music is eternal and it's everywhere, and you shouldn't box in music. Oh, that's just that type of music, and that people who listen to that type of music are boring or whatever. I have felt more emotion listening to at least Rhapsody in Blue than I have ever by like Bohemian Rhapsody. Right? And Bohemian Rhapsody is like, if you're going to feel anything, it's that song.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Queen is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Right. But some of these songs got nothing on some of these older songs that are just riveting. And or even some of the what is the German one that's the Elven King and the song, what is it called?
Oh, the one by Schubert?
Maybe, I think so. It's like where the father and son are trying to get home, but
on the horse.
Horse. Yeah. That one. I
don't remember the name of it.
I can't remember it either. But it's the basic story is this father and son are riding home, and the son keeps getting tempted by this evil elf king. And I won't spoil the end of it, but it's a masterpiece in it is a masterpiece in music because the melody, the melody, the way that it runs, Schubert runs through each tonality center of each of that melody as a part of the tell of the story, and it's just ingenious, and it's so sad, and it's so exciting, and it's so I'm not gonna give spoilers, but it's like people will consider, oh, that's posh music, or but even though that was the run of the mill for the day everyday crowd music.
It all comes down to
That was pop music back in the day.
yeah, that was like pop music, music for the people back in the day, and for me, it all comes down to relatability, and different audiences back then might have had more education than on this, or they might have been more in tune with the kind of music that they were playing back then. So when Beethoven's fifth music, his fifth symphony, when his fifth symphony came out and rocked the classical music world. That might be like today's Bohemian Rhapsody when that came out, and that shook the generations. You always have to consider the context that it was in, and for me, it all comes down to relatability and the relevance. So, some people nowadays might think of things differently because of the different experiences that they've had.
So, what are 3 performances that you would have to see in concert before you died? Or
so I'm just going to mention 2 symphonies that they're going to be symphonies, but that's just because I love the music that's in them. It's Scriabin's First Symphony. He wrote it when he was 24, 6 movements, and he uses a choir in the last movement. And
like all symphonies should.
Yes. Yes. Like they all should, of course. Particularly the first, third, and sixth movements of that symphony are my favorite. And Penderecki's Seventh Symphony, The Seven Gates of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
I discovered that piece and have not been able to stop listening to it. And oh gosh, a third piece would probably have to be, let's see, probably We Are the Champions by Queen. If I can see Queen live, I need to see them.
No, that's very fair. Very fair. I've actually been really into, or at least for a while, a lot of pop star musicians. At least I know Fall Out Boy did. They've been doing tracks with orchestras.
Yeah, I've heard that's kind of coming back. I mean, that's kind of circling back a little bit. That's the medium that people are being exposed to, the orchestral timbre nowadays.
It's
just like
so
a background
good.
for. It is so good.
It's so good.
It is so good.
Just hearing regular pop songs being transformed, written contemporarily to orchestral settings. It's wild the stuff you can do. Have you ever heard of Adam Neely at all?
No, I haven't.
He's a great bass player, and he reharmonized Adele's "Hello" to add in a big brass band, effectively.
Whoa!
And he's got like diminished chords and augmented chords in there, and it sounds fantastic. And it's one of the things that like really inspires me of like the newer musicians is the way that they reharmonize, they arrange things differently, and it still sounds like listenable.
Yeah, that actually is a practice that dates back all the way to the medieval times.
Of course, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they used to write for voices, not like an actual voice, but this is the line that needs to be played along with these other lines. It doesn't really matter the instrument, but it will sound good.
Yeah.
Together.
That's a project I've been kind of working on secretly as well, is trying to, because what if you would ever want to do this, what you would do is you keep the melody line of the singer the same, and just figure out what chords could fit nicely into that. And that's also just a wonderful thought experiment too, because if you like music theory, you'll enjoy it. If you don't like music theory, maybe try something else.
And I think that's kind of like a testament to the universally applicable nature of music, where you don't really have to know music theory, so to say, to know what kind of sound you might want to hear.
Or what sounds good.
Or what sounds good. Like you can take any piece and redo it, remix it, reorchestrate it, slim it down, beef it up, whatever you want to do with it to make the kind of sound that you want. And that can, that can be your start into finding your own, your own voice, because that's also an interesting concept, a composer having their own voice in music when they're not actually using their own voice.
Yeah. Well, that's something one thing I do as a composer always is I will always include horns and strings because I just love the sound of them. And all my pop songs, they have horns and they have strings in it, and that's my style. Granted, sometimes I do sing, but most of the time I don't because I can't sing as well as other people can.
I can't sing at all, so don't feel bad.
Well, if you ever listen to my songs, it's auto-tuned. Put it that way. And I was I couldn't afford a singer. But you can't have your own style without having like a voice, right? The way you voice your instrument is your style.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be for others to like.
It can be your own sound that you find interesting, because that's the way that music is pushed anyway. Is by, if music was purely a tradition, that there would only be one piece on Earth, and that'd be it.
If it was to maintain tradition, why bother trying to add anything new to it?
Exactly, and that's not interesting. That's not fun. The only reason why music ever progressed was because I want to try it this way. Liszt probably, granted, he was a rock star in his time, but the older people were like, "Oh, how dare he!"
Yes, how dare he play with 3 hands?
3 hands, and impossibly so.
Yeah, impossibly so.
Impossibly so. Or Rachmaninoff, where you have to have a whole extra foot on your pinky to reach some of these keys.
Another instance in which the 3rd hand would help.
Yes, another instance. And it's awesome. And that became mainstream. Who knows what's going to become mainstream in the future?
Yeah, it's because I've also dabbled in some composition as well, and it's hard to. Well, first off, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's incredibly intimidating.
Oh, absolutely! You have to create your own piece and then share it to people.
Yeah, because and then you kind of get into the mindset. Well, I have to write it so that people will
enjoy it, right?
Right, because you've got like Beethoven, you've got Bach, and you've got Mozart, and you've got all these other people that are standing behind you, looking at you like, "What are you trying to do?" Yeah,
right. And like those are like the standards of classical music.
Yeah, so it's very hard to write for you.
Yeah,
if somebody likes it, then that's
good for
great.
Yeah.
If they don't,
that's okay.
That's okay too. And if the first piece that you write because you're trying things out, if it sucks,
that's okay.
Then it sucks. It's okay.
And it's okay. And you move forward, because that's the only way you get better at something is by sucking at it.
Yep.
Over and over again.
Yep.
And then you learn new things, and then you figure out new ways to do it, and you get slowly better and better. Listen, I was god awful at piano, god awful at percussion. In some respects, I still am, but I'm way better than I was when I first started.
The people that we go to learn from are the people that have failed enough times to know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people look up to me as I did the show, and they're like, "Oh, you're doing great." I'm looking back at some of my first interviews, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, whoever let me do this?"
Yeah.
And even
Exactly.
yeah, even now, I'm sure in a few months I'll look back at some of the other interviews and be like, what was I doing? I'm an idiot.
Feel free to have me back then too.
So we actually have one of your pieces, one of the pieces that you played rather, Sonata for cello and piano, Opus 6. Who's it by?
The one we're going to be listening to is by Samuel Barber. This is actually a recording from my senior recital in college, which was a few moons ago, so don't judge.
So what is the piece about? What is it? Is it a tone poem? Is it just is it programmatic? Is it just a piece of music?
This one is, I would say, about it kind of it combines musical aesthetics with a tone poem. It tells a story, but you're really there for the different textures that are trying to evoke something.
There you go.
So it's not traditionally like 1-5-1. Here are the notes to expect. It's much more seamless than that. It will go to different places and different textures.
Without telling you about it.
Yeah, they're much more distinguished textures than what you might otherwise think of when you're thinking of a classical piece.
Well, we're gonna
Which is
play
one
it.
reason why I picked it. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, for a senior recital, I'm gonna pick something technically challenging at least, so you can show that hey, I can do something with this.
Yeah, I learned something over the past 4 years, whether you think so or not.
Right. So we're gonna play a snippet of that. And that was just one of the movements of that 20-minute sonata.
Only one. Yep.
Only one. That's another thing about classical music I just love. You can just sit there and relax and just listen to a lot of times just a wall of surrounding sound and just lose yourself in the music.
Yeah, and since you get multiple movements going on, you get a bunch of little different ideas. They all have different
Stories.
Yeah, they all have different stories. They all have different textures, and it's curious, like, why did he decide to put those together? I don't know.
And then when you get into the whole aspect of, when did he write this? What was going on in his life that made him make this song? Like Für Elise, for example, to give a popular one, Beethoven's Für Elise. He wrote it for a woman. And he correct me if I'm wrong, but she rejected him.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though he wrote this piece for her. So, just having to, and then what piece did he write after that rejection, right?
Exactly. Probably wouldn't have the Fifth Symphony for.
No.
So thank you, Elise, for rejecting Beethoven, so you could give us the
best symphony ever.
Yes.
So I'm curious. You are getting into writing material for the cello. How does one decide what to write? How do you write a training book for a cello? What is the path you went down? What need did you see to write that?
Yeah, so I was learning Popper's Etude number 33. For anybody that plays the cello, they know that is very difficult, and it contains a lot of thumb position action and a lot of movement around the fingerboard. And I was thinking to myself, I haven't really seen any exhaustive works that work with arpeggiation exercises in thumb position. Thumb position does not necessarily mean the upper register. It can cover any part of the fingerboard. So I was thinking to myself, well, this might be a great way to write some exercises for myself to work on getting there.
Are you talking about thumb position where the thumb is getting contact with the string, or just the back lowered?
Oh, yeah, sorry. The thumb position when the thumb is on the string. So one of the defining things of the cello and the string bass is that your thumb acts as almost like a portable nut. The nut is the thing at the top of the scroll that kind of like connects the strings from the scroll onto the fingerboard. So you're pretty much taking that and moving it around with your thumb, which means your thumb now needs to know where everything is. So that's like an extra level of weirdness that comes with that kind of technique. So, and then going back to the book, I started thinking, well, since this really seems to be kind of like a gap in methodology, I did research. I couldn't really find anything that covered this in this kind of extensive way. So I developed. So I worked with that idea because it was based on like a specific type of arpeggiation motion that happens where you're taking different inversions of the octave formation and moving it around. So similar to how, there's inversions with chords, right? Where you take one note and put it on top. Well, there's actually different fingering patterns, which I refer to in the piece as the book as fingering inversions, because they actually play out the arpeggiation of an inversion of the chord. Right. So
it's cool. You're creating new terminology.
Yeah. So I actually found that I had to create like a terms and definitions book so I could kind of I created my own academic legalese. Oh, there. But so I had to create that whole terms and definitions section to really kind of help myself understand what I was trying to say. And then I could go through and, I have a section that's called arpeggiations of harmonic association. I know that's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's legalese.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not relatable at all. But What it does is it takes you through all of the chords, barring jazz chords, just regular typical tonal chords that contain a specific note. So if we were going through C major, right? They're not necessarily C major, just with the key or the note C.
Mm-hmm.
You're someone starting on C. You're going to have C major, A minor, F major, F minor, C minor, A flat major, diminished, augmented, all these other things that you can play using A, and it walks you through all of those, doing them on all the sets of strings. Like the A and D string, the G and D string, and the C and G string. And that kind of got me thinking about scales. All of my students know that I talk a lot about scales. So I actually created my own method for teaching scales. And it deals a lot with, so I focus on our two strongest fingers, which are the index and the middle finger.
Mm-hmm.
And it walks you through what I call the skeletal structure, the position without the filling, right? So it starts with just the first finger and where that placement needs to be and on what string. And then if there's any kind of shift, you just slide to a specific position and then you can slide back. Because if you treat every shift as a glissando, that'll make moving around the instrument a whole lot easier. And then, so I divide each one into 3 different sections. So there's the skeletal structure, which just moves your first finger around. The second level, which is the scale with emphasis on the shift. So you play it so that you go back to the first finger at the end of the position, and then you can shift. And then the third level is the original scale that you would go through.
That's interesting. So how is this a plan to be released for others, or is it just a project for yourself?
Well, right now, so whenever my students need like more material to work with, I'll just send it to them as a PDF. I would like to release it. I'm working on a book proposal because I'll have my different scale works as, second or 2 octaves, 3 octaves, and 4 octaves together.
Mm-hmm.
So those 3 would be together, and then the arpeggiation exercises, which would be its own other thing. So I would like to release it. I'd feel really accomplished if I could, have a published book to my name. But as for right now, I'm, just working with the PDFs.
That'd be kind of cool. I'm sure that'd be a hard niche to bring into, a hard book proposal to sell.
Yeah, because there's so many scale books out there.
And there's already established methodologies or method books, method and rhythms.
Yeah, the only
essentials.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many like essentials, and lots of kids that are just learning this stuff. They go off of the what's that?
They don't need it.
Yeah, then they also are operating out of the essential elements, the Suzukis of the world, that kind of thing. So the one thing I'm thinking will kind of help bring it to light in that niche is the fact that it's different in how it explains how to go about the instrument. And with the arpeggiation exercises, I just don't think there's a whole lot out there that's that exhaustive.
Oh,
it's a couple hundred pages of material.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's decent.
Yeah. Well, for each exercise, it's like 24 pages. Because you've got the major and minor scales.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't even touch the augmented and the synthetic scales and all that kind of other stuff.
All the made up scales.
Yeah, the made up scales. Yeah, so even if I just wanted to have like 10 different exercises, that's 240 pages right there. And that's without explanation. That's without the terms and definitions. So it's a lot of content.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So doing all of this, how do you not lose your passion?
That is a very good question, because I have personally experienced burnout when you try to make your passion your trade. So when I graduated from college, I had experienced that burnout, so I kind of left the whole music thing behind me for a couple years. And you really have to be honest with yourself and tell yourself, what did I want from this? What do I want to do with this? Right? And because something is your passion does not mean it will last forever. I mean, if you wanted to, then you can try, different things. But there's always things that can, renew your interest and renew your energy into making something happen. The nice thing about music is that you can never be done learning. There is never going to be.
You can always make stuff up too.
Yeah, and you can always create your own material, and you can always think about things differently. And one of the things that kind of just brought me back to it was I just, started to remember why I got into it in the first place, and that's just to enjoy the sound. Because it's all about, how I feel when I'm playing the instrument, how it feels good to be able to play well, and it feels good to be able to, create this content that will, help me, help others when it comes to composition. It feels good to be able to have original thought, because, if you think about it, original thought is actually extremely rare and difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And
sometimes I wonder if other people have it.
Or thoughts at all, but who knows?
Right.
And when it comes to music theory, just kind of learning how people have approached it in different ways. There's a lot of different ways to, come at it in different angles. But if a good thing for your passion is also moderation. If you have too much of a good thing, then it'll eventually make you sick.
I know one person who only allows themselves to listen to this particular symphony once every year, so that way it doesn't lose its power or the catharsis.
Exactly, and the idea of it being your passion is that you're always left wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they always say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Right. So you always have to have something left that you still want to discover. There still has to be that motivation.
So with that, how do you also try to get into bigger orchestras, more notorious, noteworthy orchestras? Is that a goal for you, or is that something you're just not going to get into?
I mean, I would certainly love to be able to play with the Berlin Philharmonic. Will it ever happen in my lifetime? I'm 98% sure that it will not happen. I'm 2% thinking that I have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, of course.
So when it comes to working with a larger orchestra, that's when more practicality comes through, because it's a very music can sometimes, when it comes to like the larger orchestras, it can be much more of an old school like network type thing where they want to know who you've been studying with so that they kind of know what to expect.
If you haven't been playing with Yo-Yo Ma, you're not getting in.
Yeah, and if you play well but they don't like the style for that orchestra, then you might not also have that chance as well, because you need
the strictest people. You have to play Mozart like Mozart.
Yeah, and you also have
Mozart
to
like Bach.
You have to play well with an ensemble, and lots of people want to be a soloist on the major like performance networks. That doesn't even go into the types of competition that you have, because when you take an orchestra like New York Philharmonic, right?
Mm-hmm.
What comes with that is, obviously you get to play with the New York Philharmonic, and that's incredible.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's like
one of the world-class orchestras.
It's one of the best, orchestras in the world. And then you also get paid like $150,000 a year.
Which is also nice.
You get to be a musician for a living. And, you have a quasi-flexible schedule where you can, teach at a local university, or you can have your own students. So it's really kind of a great combination of work-life balance, and you also get to make incredible music with incredible musicians and get paid a lot of money for it, right? So you're going to have a couple thousand people that want to do that, right? And you've got them coming from Juilliard, you've got them coming from Curtis, from Berkeley, from Brown, Yale, and all these big names, the Paris Conservatory, all these places where they've been playing since the age of 7
or younger.
Yeah, or 3 or
right.
or whatever, wherever they're at. And then and they're considered virtuosos, they have such technical talent, and then that's the kind of thing that you're going up against. And they've had experiences, going to music festivals, or meeting all these big name people, getting expertise advice, and they have a whole list of things. It's like the list of things that are against you when it comes to that is massive, right? And if you're anything like me, like while all of my friends were going to these music festivals, I had to work a job over the summer. I worked for UGI. I worked for a utilities company, going around reading gas meters and practicing whenever I got home. So when you're going for a major audition, it's not impossible. It's going to be difficult. You just got to make sure that you are comfortable with what you're playing, and you don't need to necessarily think that it's all going to be lost.
And you have to recognize that it's okay that isn't your end goal.
Yeah, even if you do want that to be your end goal, it's okay if it doesn't happen. Right. That's something that I've struggled with for a lot, because for the longest time, like, I want to be this great cellist. I want to be, playing all over the world and all that. And then you have to come to the reality that, I studied at a local conservatory. I did not go to Juilliard. I did not go to Eastman. I did not go to one of those big names. The teachers I had were great, but I
probably didn't spend as much time as.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I had to work, and I was a normal kid. So
right. With normal
didn't
parents.
have normal kid, normal parents, and I did not have 8 hours a day to practice. I was not forced to practice for 6 to 8 hours a day, as some people are, as you can do with strings, because it doesn't ruin the air.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. And I guess you'd have to build calluses, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah. Okay, you need calluses, or else it's going to be very painful.
Right. That's my block on the cello.
Yeah, I don't know who decided to put a thin metal wire across a piece of wood and then you rub your fingers up and down it, if that was a good idea. But
crazy people.
Mine is not to question why. But when you come to that kind of reality that if you go for one of these things, your competition is going to be extreme, but you really don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything to gain at that point.
Nothing to lose, everything to gain, so you might as well try to go for the adventure.
And you're gonna learn so much and meet so many cool people, and you're gonna meet some not so great people as well. But
yeah, it can be cutthroat when it's performance based, literally. You're gonna have some cutthroat people that are vying for that spot.
Yes.
So you always want to hold yourself true to your ethical and moral standards, of course. And
so, speaking about your ethical and moral standards, great segue. How does your faith influence the way you traverse your musical career?
Yeah, great question. So when you're around musicians, they're more often than not, like in the classical music realm, they're more often than not more educated. And when you're around more educated people, they are more often than not more skeptical of religion, as others might be who grew up. I mean, I grew up in the church and everything, and I have found that my musical upbringing has, strengthened my beliefs because it introduced me into the idea of critical thinking and questioning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you have to do that when you're playing an instrument in order to improve yourself. It's an investment into your own abilities and your
Into
own
the future.
creative process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of mindset and lifestyle, because being a musician is not just a career, it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle, it's a mindset in addition to that. So it's kind of like this all-encompassing thing. And so that mindset cannot help but kind of bleed into other areas of your life where you question why. What is the purpose of this? Does this really make sense to me?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of helps to that kind of discipline from music helped marry the ideas of personal truth and religious ideals for me. And that's how it's helped to kind of strengthen that. When it comes to religion, I mean, it's not. It's not a taboo subject around here, but like because you kind of just like assume about others, you in the general sense.
Mm-hmm.
But you rarely find someone come up to you and ask you. It was great playing this concert with you. What's your religious perspective on life, right?
I just loved how you hit your string. You must be a Christian.
Exactly. Yes, you're Christian. Your performance must have been divinely inspired, or
right?
you're Christian,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So it's one of the biggest things I would say that's influenced it is learning to love others. Is probably one of the biggest Christian ideas.
I was gonna say that's probably for everyone. Like learning to love others and what that actually means.
Yeah, and most people mistake loving others with being in love with others.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Loving people is a struggle.
It is.
No matter how easy you might find it, it's a struggle to accept others for who they are.
It is.
Regardless of anything about them that's different, you love them, you accept them, and that's part of the universality of music because it can bring you together because you're sharing a common purpose. So it can help teach you how to love others, to accept them as they are without conditions.
Mm-hmm. So, what is worship, or how would you describe or define worship?
Worship doesn't always mean music for me. Worship is when you're trying to, praise God, that can come in different ways, right? That means that means I am taking the skills that I have been given, that I have been blessed with, and using them to the best of my abilities, right? Using them well, acknowledging them, investing in them. Like the
parable of the talents.
Exactly. You're worshiping him by acknowledging that he has given you these gifts, and you are going to use them to the best of your abilities
and invest them.
And that's how you say thank you. Thank you for giving me this. I appreciate that you've given this to me, and I am going to
share it.
I'm going to share it. I'm going to build it. I'm going to take it and use it and invest it and try to impact others in the best way that I can. Whether that be, as a musician, as an accountant, as an engineer, or as somebody who collects the trash every day.
Right.
It can influence, it doesn't have to necessarily be through an occupation. It can just be,
through everyday life.
Yeah. And that also takes acknowledging who you are, understanding yourself, because there'll be those people like, oh, I don't feel like I have any talents or skills like that. I can't speak well in front of people. I'm not an engineer. I might just be, a barista in between degrees right now or something like that.
Got talent enough to be a barista. I can't imagine.
That's tough. Yeah.
Mocha what?
And they always want cinnamon on top.
So, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started in this regard to music or profession or anything?
I probably would have changed where I went to school.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so we are in the age of specialization nowadays.
Yes.
So everybody that does their, respective job is, needs to be exceptional at it because there's 100,000 other people that are just as good as you. So you need to really have the best skill set.
There's 320 million Americans, and you're one of them.
And I am one of them. Yes. And so Gettysburg is a liberal arts college. You get a great rounded education in every aspect of academia, and
Liberal arts.
I also had the additional music curriculum. Right, that's where Gettysburg helped develop my interest in economics and financial policy, and but when it comes to specializing, if you go to a conservatory like, I don't know, Eastman or Peabody or Juilliard, where it's specifically music, you will make the connections there. You will have the opportunities there that will help to launch.
Eds.
Yeah, gen eds. Gen eds or the course requirements or something like that. Going to a specialized school like that and having that very specific educational experience would probably be something that I would change. Mm. I would also start the cello at the age of 4, not the piano.
Last question. What are some mistakes that you have made or you've seen other cellists or students make, and how can we curb that?
I think one of the biggest things is not respecting the time and dedication it takes to actually perfect the craft.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, because when you say to someone that you're a professional musician and you play an instrument, the thing that they're going to think of first is the most famous name with that instrument, because that person is really good. So they're going to think professional means that you're at this caliber.
Oh,
when really, you're down here because instead of practicing the 3 to 6 hours a day, sacrificing the social events, sacrificing the other things that you might have to give up in order to, put the time and dedication into mastering the craft, you only put them 1 to 2 hours a day. You have to acknowledge to yourself, what is this worth to me?
The meme is someone come, oh, you're so good. I wonder what you did to make you so good. It's practice. I can't. I just want to know. I wish I was that good. Practice.
Yeah. Is it some gift from above?
You must be naturally practice. No, it's practice.
Practice. Yeah. Once you get into like years and years of study and practice, you really do understand the phrase. I think it was Bach that said it, where he said, being a great musician is 1% talent and 99% hard work.
Yes. And
really, when it comes to being a good musician, it's just about the critical thinking. Because if you want to make effective process in a practice or effective progress in a practice session, you need to be able to think quickly about what you're playing, how to make improvements,
time, and all that jazz.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've had fun too.
So, do you have any upcoming performances? Any recitals or anything like that? That are public?
Possibly. I'm in the midst of trying to form a new musical duo, educational group down here in Lancaster that performs in unlikely spaces. So I can keep you informed on that.
Well, hey, find that stuff out on his website. GregoryFlury.com.
Yep. Updates coming soon.
That's Flury. Only one R.
1 hour short of a snowflake.
1 hour short of a snowflake. If you enjoy what I'm doing, please be sure to follow us anywhere you like. You can search up The Story Coy Rosen. That's CORYROSEN. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even YouTube now. are also on TikTok, whether it's for the better or for not. And if you want to keep up to date with all of our events and guests, check us out on Instagram at the_story_podcast or facebook.com/the story Corey Rosen. And you can find all of that stuff there. Tomorrow I'm gonna be have on one of my idols actually. I've been inspired by this dude for a very long time, Daryl Davis. If you haven't checked him out, he's a black jazz musician who, over the course of these years, has de-radicalized over 100 or so KKK members. So I'm really excited to talk to him and get a little info on that. Forget the fact that he's performed with people like Chuck Berry, Chubby Checker, all these insanely cool cats of the rock and roll community and blues community. So if you want to check that out, please be sure to check that out. Otherwise, we'll be on Monday with the leader of the Big Boy Brass Band here in Lancaster, Connor Devlin. I'm really excited to talk to him as well. With all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys later. Bye!